10 seconds. You can go ahead and start. All right, you are good to go.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in today. And thank you for joining us for Community Development Week. My name is Jessica Wynn, and I am with the City of High Point's Citizen Advisory Council. I serve as the parliamentarian on the Citizens Advisory Council, or CAC. We are a non-member board of volunteers that make recommendations to City Council on how to spend their annual CBG funds. And so the city gets these funds annually every year, as I said, and they help fund programs that various nonprofits in the city of High Point lead up. They're very important to the city of High Point, and without such, we would be in dire straits. So Community Development Week, which you're tuning into now, was kind of started to help shed light on these programs. In the past, Congress has tried to reduce funding, eliminate funding. And so Community Development Week is really to highlight these organizations that do all of this important work with the city and get Congress and the community in general both educated and excited about the work that they do. And so through these funds that the city gets annually, they're able to fund organizations like the ones you're going to hear from today, and through these organizations, they cover initiatives like homelessness, public service grants, homeowners assistance, among many other initiatives throughout the city of High Point. And so through the course of Community Development Week, we are going to talk about a different subject every day and highlight different organizations that kind of tackle that initiative. And so April 6th today, we're going to be discussing homelessness. And so we're going to hear from organizations that address homelessness or assist people who are affected by homelessness. So I'm really, really excited to be able to hear from these organizations. Through my time on the Citizens Advisory Council, I've gotten to know each of them and how important the work that they do is. So I'm really excited to be able to share that with you guys, the community today. Before we get started, we're going to hear a few comments from Councilman Cyril Jefferson, who's on the line. And we'll also be hearing from Victor Jones if he's able to join us. So Councilman Jefferson, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. It's so good to be here with you all. And I appreciate everyone who's here on this Zoom call to chat about a very important topic. All week long, we're talking about topics in regards to community development that are huge. And today's topic is one that I think is as big as any other for individuals experiencing homelessness. Just imagine that over this past year or so, we've all had to deal with the pandemic. We've had to deal with it in regards to the health crisis, in regards to the economic crisis and fallout that's happened as a result. We've dealt with other issues, but imagine that many of us go home every day knowing that we have somewhere to lay our head. And Michelle, I think we got some feedback coming through. Do you mind? Michelle McNair. Thank you. But imagine those folks go home, and for them, they're not going to a home. And so they're experiencing the pandemic, they're experiencing the economic crisis, they're experiencing whatever headache or stress they feel from any political events, anything like that, from the riots to everything we've seen over this past year. They're all experiencing that. And day to day, they're not able to go home. And I don't know about you all, but just that basic necessity, I would never, ever consider that to be a privilege. I would consider that to be a right, someone having shelter. And so we're grateful for the partners on this call. I see representing Open Door Ministries, Weston Ministries, partners, Ending Homelessness, Tiny House Community Development, which we're so excited to see what you all are doing here in the city as well, as a rather newer initiative. But you all are serving such a huge need for, in many cases, folks who every day is an emergency and every day they don't know what it's going to look like. And when you have that much insecurity in your life, it's good to know that there are at least these kinds of organizations who are willing to work with you and support you, and that provides some form of security. So I want to thank the City of High Point. Our staff has been doing an incredible job. Our community resource manager, Michelle McNair, and everyone on the team has been doing an incredible job to prepare for this week. I do want to say, in the stead of Councilman Jones, he and I spoke, and he wanted to make it work out this morning. He had a flight that he thought would be earlier, and it changed up on him. And so he's actually in transit in air right now. And unless he's got some really good Wi-Fi up there, I don't think he'll be joining anytime soon. So also, I'm sorry. I feel so remiss because I didn't say Dr. Patrick Harmon, who I've heard some people call him the LeBron James of High Point. So Patrick, thank you for everything you do. In case you guys have never heard that nickname, it was given to him by Clarice Sigsworth. So Patrick, thank you for everything you're doing as well in these arenas. And thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Councilman Jefferson. You're definitely right. I mean, homelessness is already a huge problem all of the time anyway, but this past year has definitely brought on new challenges that I don't think anyone was expecting. So that makes these agencies even more important than they already were, which was kind of endlessly important. So before we get started, we're going to hear from some of the, we're going to hear from all of the organizations today. But before we get started, I just want to go over a quick few housekeeping things. The speakers, if you could keep your microphones on mute while other speakers are presenting, just so we don't get feedback or anything like that. And then for those of you watching, if you have any questions at all, feel free to type them in the chat or in that Q&A feature. They will be addressed at the end. Our awesome coordinator, April Jones, is going to address those for us once we get to the end. So please type all the questions as you come up with them in the chat or the Q&A box, and we will definitely get to them. So without any further ado, the first organization we're going to hear from is Open Door Ministries of High Point, and we'll be hearing from Will Bulboy. Will, I'm going to pass it to you.
Good morning. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's been, I want to say, an interesting year, to say the least. Homelessness here in High Point, I've been here at Open Door, 6 years now. And, the changes that I've seen, some for the good, some not for the good, but the need is still there. It seems like it's, more and more every year. And the pandemic has really hit us hard as far as, trying to follow CDC guidelines, trying to keep everybody safe, work on social distancing, all those kind of things has really affected the way we operate. Whereas we used to be a 68 bed facility, we're now down to 34. And if you can imagine, the need in High Point has not gone down just because the pandemic is here. And so we've been struggling to get people in a lot quicker and get them into permanent housing a lot quicker, which is why I love, the CDBG funding that we get from the city has been so instrumental in what we've been doing. Without that, we couldn't house half the people we house here from the shelter. We rely on that for, security deposits for that first month's rent. And the pandemic has made that even more so, because quicker we can get them in, the quicker we can get more people in off the street. And that's what the goal is. And so again, a lot of challenges. And I think all of us who are working in the field with homelessness have just been banding together one way or another. It's because we're fighting the same fight, every day, trying to figure out how can we do this? How can we house more people? How can we, use the resources we got, stretch them even thinner than what they already are? And again, I struggle with that every day myself, trying to figure out, okay, how can I get more and more for these guys that we work with? And it's the pandemic, with the economy finally turning around. There has been some slow goings this year. Michelle McNair knows that with the downturn in the job situation. Now it's on the increase. For a long time, we had guys struggling to get, anything to support housing. And, that was kind of the other part of that whole equation. And so now we're seeing an upswing in that. And now we're still dealing with some limited housing resources. That's our other problem that we're trying to expand on here in High Point. I think that's been going on for a long time. Affordable housing and more options for the guys that we work with. But again, I'm so glad to be part of this community and to be working with this population. Like I said, it's very rewarding. It makes me want to pull what hair I have left out of my head, but look like Patrick before the end of this thing. But anyway, so glad to be a part of the city of High Point and what we're trying to accomplish here. And I just want to keep up the fight. So I thank you for this opportunity. And again, thank the city for their continuing endless support of this organization, what we're trying to do. I couldn't say enough thanks about that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Will. It's great to hear kind of like an overview of like what you guys do, but then also the struggles that you're kind of dealing with. Next, we're going to hear from West End Ministries. We have Brad Bowers, who's going to be presenting for us today. Brad, I'm going to pass it to you.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for having me on here today. I am going to try to pull up my PowerPoints. This is a new PowerPoints that we just had. It does have our most recent updated data from 2020, and I'm trying to let me see if I've got the right one. Not yet. I may have just lost it.
Brett, we see your slides.
Can you see the slides?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Now we cannot.
You can't see them now.
No.
I do apologize.
Okay.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit about West End Ministries. You can see them right now, correct?
We can see them, yes.
Okay. I'm just trying to make sure this was not my, and if something's on here it shouldn't be, I do apologize. This is a work in progress. Today is actually the first day we just tried this, trying this PowerPoints program. I want to talk a little bit about West End Ministries and what we do here. I want to tell you where we come from, why we do the programs that we run, and we're going to really focus in on the programs that we run for the homeless. Here at West End Ministries, and this is a fascinating story. I always like to tell this. We become a 501c3 in 2001. The reason we become a 501c3, there was 3 churches in the West End community: English Road Baptist Church, First Reformed Church of Christ, and Rankin Memorial. What's so great about that story, each one of them's from a different denomination. They knew that they could do so much more if they come together than what they was doing by themselves. Every one of these churches was doing a program. English Road was helping with food insecurity. Rankin had a Boys and Girls Club, and First Reform had a clothing closet. They decided to come together in 2001 and they formed West End Ministries. It shows what working with partners and coming together can accomplish. I'm going to talk very briefly about just an overview of some of our programs, and then we're going to talk more in depth about them as well. Some of the things that we try to tackle here at West End Ministries, of course, is food insecurity. And we do that through a food pantry and a community meal. We also have over an acre of land that we use as a park and a community garden. We have 2 shelters here on our campus as well. We have Leslie's House, which is a shelter year-round. It's open 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. It is for single women without dependents. The way High Point is broken up, like Will and Open Doors, they focus on single men. Salvation Army, they will focus on families, and we focus on single women. We actually have more beds than anybody in Guilford County for single women. We not only serve High Point, we serve all of Guilford County, and we have women that will come from other states that are referred in from different. We just had a lady come from Texas because of domestic violence. They actually, the marshals placed her in High Point. So we have women come from all over. We're definitely going to come back and talk more about Leslie's House and our winter shelter. The winter shelter is a great story in itself. And we're going to get into that. We also, senior citizens, I love our seniors. We've always felt like our seniors sometimes will fall through the cracks. So we run programs for our senior citizens as well. We actually run several programs for them. We're also going to talk about education. We partner with High Point Leap. Part of our campus, actually it's our second floor of this building, is nothing but classrooms. High Point Leap, they come in, they do after school care, they focus on tutoring and mentoring. And then we also do emergency assistance. We help people with whether it's their utilities, their rent, which has been very big this year. We also, one thing that kind of falls through the cracks sometimes is our thrift stores. And as you can see on the slide, it says thrift store, but we just had our grand opening of our second thrift store. Thrift stores, and because I do not have a slide on here for them, I'm going to talk just very briefly about that. It serves a dual mission. Not only does it provide a large majority of our revenue, our budget, we try to be as self-sustaining as possible, but it's also the women that come into our shelter, a lot of them come in with clothes on their back. Of course, they go to our thrift stores, we're able to get them whatever they need. We also, our community comes in. Nobody in our community is going to come up on a cold day and not leave with a coat or leave with the proper shoes. We have people that we, in our community, when they have job interviews, they will come to us or they need work clothes. We actually give away just about as much as we sell, to be honest, which is a good thing. And like I tell people, it's a ministry within a ministry. One thing that we try to do, with every one of these groups, we're looking to help with the short-term need, whatever the short-term need is, but we also help try to get them the long-term need. Well, I'm watching the clock, Michelle. We're always trying to, our philosophy is that if we can build a stronger family, we're building stronger communities. We do that in many different ways, as we're going to look at. One thing that I would like to say, we pride ourselves on partnering with other agencies. Me and Will work together on many projects. Patrick has been instrumental this year in some of the things that they've done. We love the washing station. I know Mr. Jefferson was talking about people that are struggling with homelessness. They don't have a home to go back to. If you remember when COVID hit, one thing that they said, wash your hands, wash your hands. Well, if you're homeless, you don't have nowhere to wash your hands. Patrick come in, he installed a washing station down at our community garden. It's still there right now. You wouldn't believe how many people we see use that, Patrick, and I appreciate that. Of course, we work nonstop with Partners in Homelessness. Debbie Bailey just left my office, Brian, right before we got on this meeting. And we're looking very forward to working with Scott and the tiny homes. So our partnerships with other agencies mean so much to us. I want to talk to you a little bit about our children. High Point Lee, even though it's after school care, they focus on tutoring and mentoring. We try to help people that's living in homelessness right now. And we're going to talk about that, but we're doing everything we can for them. We're trying to make sure our seniors do not fall through the cracks. What I do not want to see is our children in 5 or 10 years to be up here in our shelter, to be up here to have to get help paying their light bill, or to be up here in our food pantry. Education is the key to that. We truly believe that. I'm going to go ahead. One thing that the CAC and the CDBG, the city, helped us with a few years ago was to turn a lot of our space that we had in our building into classrooms. And we've done that with the funding from the city and the CDBG. And through that, now the children have, not only do we have libraries, a computer room, we've actually got classrooms that are set up just for that. And we could not have done that without our partnership with the city. I'm going to talk a little bit about our shelters. Leslie's House, and like Will said, we are a 22-bed shelter, Leslie's House. When COVID hit, we had to cut our bed count to 14 to socially distance, the same as every shelter in the country did. The problem with that is the number of homelessness did not go down. If anything, it went up because of the pandemic. When women come into Leslie's House, and that was another reason for our overflow shelter, which we're going to talk about. But when women come into Leslie's House, they meet with caseworkers. Caseworkers are very, very important. We've had to add caseworkers this year. Like Will was talking about, because our bed count is lower, we try to get them in and get them out quicker, which means they need more time with case managers. We've also got a therapist now who is on site. We could not have done that without the city's help and the CDBG. In 2020, we had asked for help with our case workers to help not only with Leslie's House, but with our winter shelter. And they come through for us. Like I said, we find out what their barriers are, what brought them to us. We try to get past those, and then we try to get them into housing. One of the ways we get them into housing, we do pay once they've got income coming in, we will pay their first month's rent or their deposits to get them in. Once we know that they're stable, we do that with money that we received from our CDBG, and our partnership with the city cannot be under talked about for that. In most years, we see over 200 women a year, usually about 240. Last year, we seen 135, and that was because of the bed count drop. Our winter shelter became very obvious that it was a need in 2019. We started seeing the increase in women who are facing homelessness. And I want to tell you, as bad as it is to be homeless, to be a woman and be homeless, some of the stories that we hear, I can't even talk about some of the stories that we hear. The community, again, come in 2019, they brought the need to us. And between the people in the community and many churches and different organizations that do street outreach, they said, we need an overflow. Y'all need more beds. So we started in 2019 a women's winter shelter that we hold here in our dining room during the winter. We actually have space for about 20 beds. Made it very hard this year with social distancing, but we were still able to accommodate that. We was full. Not only was Leslie's House full this year, our winter shelter was full. At any time, we have 30 women here on our premises. Because of COVID, We also now, things like the library was shut down. The buses didn't even run in 2020. Um, our shelters went from people having to leave during the morning and then come back in the evening to where they are now open 24/7. So of course that means more meals. It means more of everything. And again, Michelle, the city, the community development, the CDBG, the CAC, thank you, because we could not have done it without y'all. We also fight food insecurity. We see over 200 families come through here. Most of the time, that number has actually increased during the COVID. Right now, we will feed over 11,000 people every single year through our food pantry. The need is just great. Our food pantry, unfortunately, we've had to go through a drive-through because we're not letting people into the building like we used to. We just opened a new food pantry, which we're planning on people can come through and shop for what they need. But right now we're having to do drive-through. That hopefully will be able to open up in 2020 where they can actually come into the building, maybe even by the end of this year. Our community meal, we used to feed over 700 people a month through our community meals. That has dropped some since we started doing to-go plates because I tell you what, when it's cold and rainy and people just don't get out like they do when they can come inside and eat. Our senior programs, I told you how important they are. We have two events a month. We have somewhere between 50 and 100 seniors come to each event. We always make sure our seniors have food. We're fighting food insecurity every day. We deliver to our seniors as well, the ones who can't get out and come to our pantry. We also give out vouchers to local restaurants, the ones who can drive and want to go and get a meal, whether it's takeout in 2020, a lot of them done takeout. Now that we're starting to see them get out more due to the vaccines, we don't want to see anybody fall through the cracks. The seniors also do not ask for help. That's one thing we've had to really deal with is we have to go to them. They will not come to you. Our community garden, thanks again to the city. They lease us our land for our community garden. Our community garden is over an acre of land. It's actually a garden in a park. We have two community gardens on this land. We also have 3 playgrounds. We have huge picnic shelters, picnic benches, tables. We have benches throughout the park. This is where we hold events. We have cookouts. We have National Night Out at this event. We'll have bands come and set up. It's a bright spot in our community. We took this land, which was just an overgrown plot of land, about 6 years ago. We turned it into one of the hopefully bright areas for this community, which is just now we're getting everything started. Spring is, all the spring planting is being done right now. I want to talk to you about ways, if you know anybody that wants to get involved at West End Ministry, we would love to have you. You can always help us with our food serve. We do it outside, so we of course practice all the COVID social distancing. Our community garden's a great place because we are outside. Leslie's house, you can, even though we're limiting people coming into our shelters, please come, bring a meal, drop a meal off. We're feeding 3 meals a day. A lot of meals go out of our kitchens. We have two kitchens between our community meal for the community, the kitchen in the shelters. We also do mobile meals where we feed over 110 seniors a day during Christmas and Easter. You can always bring a meal to our shelters. It would be muchly appreciated. You can come work in our thrift store in the back where you will be socially distanced to help. There's always ways to get involved. I always encourage people to come and get involved. again, we attack homelessness many different areas, everywhere, from our shelters where we're dealing with the problem at hand, to our children trying to avoid it from ever starting. And if you have any questions, if you ever want to come out and take a tour of our campus, I'd love to talk about West End. I'd love to show you around and show you what we have going on here. And I believe that's all for me.
Awesome. Thank you, Brad. We really, really appreciate it. That was a great overview of your organization, everything that you're doing. And I definitely encourage anybody that's watching to take Brad up on his offer to go tour the facility, volunteer in some way. I think that what you guys are doing is really important. Do we need to stop sharing the screen so the next presenter can share? Brad, are you able to stop your share?
I thought I did. Hang on a minute. All right, try that.
There you go.
There we go. All right.
Thank
Didn't
you.
have my glasses on. I do apologize.
You're fine. You're
But I
fine.
hit that.
Again, great presentation. Thank you so much. Next, we're going to hear from Scott Jones with the Tiny House Community Development. Tiny houses are definitely something I feel like is cool and I see on TV, but Scott here is making it a reality in the community. So Scott, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Hello, everyone. Glad to be here to share what we're doing in High Point with you guys. So we got started. We're coming up on 7 years in existence as a nonprofit 501c3. So we're pretty excited about that. But what we've been focusing on is looking around High Point and finding opportunities to create small tiny house communities. We've got the privilege and blessing to have had land donated to us by individuals. So our first site is kind of behind me right now on Hay Street. That site will be finished in June or July, and we will be occupying those 10 tiny houses. Those 10 tiny houses, actually, the way we're going to do it, we're going to have at least 4 need-based houses. That can be any member of the Guilford County COC who has individuals that have been with their program, whether it's long-term shelter or transitional housing, that we can qualify and they can provide a referral to us. And our case manager will work with that agency's personnel to get them in and adjusted to housing with Tiny House Community. And then we'll have 2 houses. They're a little bit larger, the bedroom is, and that's for parent-child. So what we're looking at is single mom or single dad with a child. It's a little bit larger house, but they'll be in the same bedroom, but that'll give them an opportunity to have a family there. And then we have 4 houses along the back that will be reserved for veterans. We take a lot of pride. We make sure that each community has a certain number of houses that are veteran accessible. One of the 10 houses will be fully ADA compliant. You'll roll right in and out of that house. The other 9 houses are being built with ADA compliancy in mind. In other words, the bathrooms and kitchen will be equipped for handicap accessible. They could have a ramp or something added at a later date. Or if it's somebody that has a limited mobility, they'll be able to use those units easily, a little easier. All of our houses, we're proud to have all of our appliances in there. So it's just like your own home in most cases. So there are washer dryer connections, small linen closet, walk-in showers, 5-foot showers. So they're nice size showers. The kitchens have all of the modern appliances except for dishwasher. They've got this full stove, 4 refrigerators, microwave, double sinks. So it's the same as your typical home. They're just tiny houses, a little bit larger on foundations. And so what we're striving for is, as we're building these communities, we're keeping several things in mind. Like Hay Street, we're putting a covered bus shelter. So we're have provide access on the sidewalk. There's a bus stop there. So we're going to put a covered bus stop there for the clients, not just living in the tiny houses, but the community at large, because a lot of them like to use that spot. We're going to have a community garden. So there's going to be a 2,000 square foot community garden with raised beds. And we're going to actually put muscadine grapevines on two long trellises. And we worked with the planning department, and all of the landscaping, 80% of the landscaping is edible. So blueberries, blackberries, some fruiting trees, some shade trees. So we kept that in mind, because not only can the residents at the community that are living there partake in this, but the larger community can come in anytime they want. It's not gated, so they can walk through the community. The other thing we're doing, High Point City's out there right now with the electrical. Along the street, both sides are going to have street lamps. We're putting the little post lamp or the tall post lamps in for additional lighting, so that it makes it a little bit safer for people that are traversing around the community, but by the community as well on the sidewalks, public sidewalks. So we're looking at doing this and replicating this throughout High Point as land becomes available. We, like I said, are very fortunate to have two sites. One is under construction and one is getting ready to go under construction in the coming months, if not sooner. It is a fully veteran accessible community. Only vets will live in that community. That community site plan has been submitted, hopefully for the last time, for final approval. And once it's approved, we will have some great CDBG funds available to actually renovate 900 square foot that will include a glorified break room. And I'll just say glorified because that's what we were told. An office for veterans to get assistance. So any agency who is working with clients can come over there and utilize that office, or we'll have somebody there, a meeting room, and then a common room, so in a bathroom. So we're excited to get the funding to help renovate that structure and have a place for not just the veterans in that community, but any veteran in High Point can come there if they need assistance. It will have 6 tiny houses and 2 3-bedroom houses. So we're going to be getting started on construction. We're looking at Home Depot again with the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency support and High Point City CDBG funds. Hate to back up, but with Hay Street, we did receive a $10,000 community block grant for the garden, and we're excited to have had those funds. It's helped us get grading and other things ready for that garden. And as soon as High Point puts the wires in for the street lamps, then we will get started putting the fence up that's sitting out back that I need to get up, and the garden beds out and put in. So we're really moving forward. We're looking at other sites as well. Try to spread out a little bit in High Point and build something. We provide meals in Guilford County. Specifically, in the past 6 years, we've provided meals downtown in Greensboro, where we have, in last year, we served over 2,000 meals, prepared and served over 2,000 meals just last year. We're hoping to extend that to another day in High Point to offer meals that will be cooked at the facility on Smith Street and shared from Smith Street or another site. That's one of our goals, is to be able to have somebody cook there and provide a meal for the community at large. So one of the things we're really proud of, being a part of the Guilford County COC, we have actually been using veterans from Open Door Ministries. Kudos, Open Door Ministries. We have had a number of veterans come out to our community and actually stand walls up and set roofs. We actually have right now in my back shop 2 veterans from Open Door Ministries over here every day. Both of them get paid minimum wage. They come and do all sorts of jobs in our shop, and we're extending that to all shelter agencies, if you got individuals in your shelter who want to come out and do something, volunteering initially, send them our way. We've got plenty of woodworking, building, carpentry skills, gardening skills. So they're not in the shelter all the time, so they can come out and actually participate. It's just, we believe in collaboratives. We've always done that. We use the universities. We rely on our fellow shelter partners and transitional housing partners to really help us, because I don't do it alone. We don't do it alone. We're all here today to really tell everybody about the great things that are happening with CBG funds and in High Point. And we're just super excited. So if you have any questions, I'll be available. I think that's it for me. So if somebody wants to go a little longer.
Thank you, Scott. That was great. Definitely like a creative solution. And I didn't know that you guys did meals in Greensboro. That's really cool. Looking forward to when you extend that to High Point, but I didn't know that about you guys.
I love cooking. I cook every Saturday morning on a hot griddle. And we did some cooking as well for the quarantine hotel. So on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but numbers are down, so we're not doing it as much now, which is a good thing.
Yeah, that's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Next, we're going to hear from Brian Hahn. He's with the Partners for Ending Homelessness. Brian, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right. Good morning, everybody. I will be fairly brief as well. Let me just begin by saying it is a privilege for me to work with all these folks. I see these folks pretty regular on Zoom calls these days, and so we are real allies and partners in this work. And I've always viewed them and their organizations as the heroes on the front lines doing the hard work every day. And at Partners Ending Homelessness, we're sort of behind the scenes conducting the symphony, if you will. If you can get everyone to work together collaboratively and with trust, it's amazing what you can accomplish. And so I'll explain about the past year, how that's happened. But before I do, we do three primary things at Partners. The first is we're now the administrative agent of what's called the collaborative applicant. Guilford County stepped up last fall to embrace that role on behalf of the Guilford County COC, the Continuum of Care. And all that means is we're the administrator, we're the structure, the kind of pulling together this network of about 50 plus partner agencies across Guilford County. And we're involved in the big ask every year of federal funding on behalf of Guilford County. About $2+ million comes into this county collaboratively, where HUD evaluates how we're doing as a whole. The second is we manage all the data. So you may have heard of the Homeless Management Information System. It's data. At the end of the day, I can tell great stories. I can, stories like what Brad and Will can tell you and others, but HUD wants to see the metrics. And funders want to see them. I'm sure Patrick wants to see the metrics all right, tell me how, what kind of impact you're having, where are you investing your resources, what kind of movement are you having in this work? So we look at that, all that data. And the third area is, and this has gotten us more in direct services, which is called coordinated entry. Essentially what that means is we're coordinating the entry into the homeless system. First, we hope to divert folks from entering the system in the first place, if possible. We want to keep them housed. We don't want more folks going to Brad or Will, or we want folks, if they can, to stay housed. And then secondly, we try to get them a housing placement. Coordinated entry is about housing. It's not about shelter placement. And so we play that role. We have a team focused on that aspect. We have street outreach. We have a case manager that's working closely with clients that are often chronic, cycling in and out of the shelter system. And so we've gone from not just sort of this administrative function, but really linking arm in arm with our partners throughout Guilford County and doing this work every day. So let me talk about this past year. I don't wish COVID on anybody. Lord knows we've all had this extremely challenging and stressful year. But crisis creates opportunity. And a year ago, when we were literally fearing, like our shelter system in particular, were lame ducks, it wasn't a matter of if, but when COVID would hit, there was a lot of fear. And just like the nursing home community, there was a lot of fear. And so we formed the COC, along with our organization, formed the Guilford County COVID-19 Response Task Force. Members on this call are a part of that task force, and we still meet weekly. This is amazing to me. For 13 months, we've been meeting weekly to respond to this crisis. And it has been one of the privileges of my professional career, because there is innovation happening. There is collaboration happening that we didn't have pre-COVID. There is trust. Brad will tell you he's now got best friends in Greensboro, and folks in Greensboro now have best friends in High Point that they didn't know the work that they did. And really what we've done is we've responded. We've moved nearly 1,000, really more than 1,000 clients safely into shelter over the last 13 months, and have kept that COVID positive rate at or about 6%, which is stunning to me. And that's all while operating at 50% capacity or less. So Brad and Will and Antoine at Salvation Army had to adapt on the fly because we didn't want, obviously, this tight congregate housing. I would say now what's shifting is we're moving into recovery. We've been responding to a crisis. We've needed to do that. And now we're shifting, which is really where we were pre-COVID, on housing. We want people to stay housed. We know there's challenges. There's lack of affordable housing. And so we're now, I think we have some of the best collaboration maybe we've had in my 4+ years here, where there's this movement to not only keep people sheltered safely, but frankly, to get them on their feet, working, sustainable, and healthy. So that's all I'll say. It's a privilege for me to work with these folks, and thank you, Michelle, for having me on the call.
Thank you so much, Brian. That was awesome. I've definitely started to hear bits of it for everybody else's presentation, but you kind of echoed it beautifully. The collaboration between everybody is amazing. It's not a bunch of organizations operating in a silo. It's everybody teaming up together to get one mission accomplished. So that's really awesome. Thank you so much for your time. Patrick Harmon with the Hayden Harmon Foundation is up next. Patrick, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, thanks, Jessica. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Yes, I'm Patrick Harmon, the director of the Hayden Harmon Foundation. Talked a little bit about the sanitations effort that was started thanks to the Community Development Block Grant money that was specifically for addressing coronavirus issues. And I thought I would start off with a video. Fox 8 was excited about this story when they learned about the proposal. And so this story is actually from before we actually installed the sanitation station. It'll give you some background of the whys and hows, and then I'll talk a little bit more in detail about how this actually rolled out. So hopefully this will work.
Are you all able to hear the video? I don't think we can hear it, Patrick.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Okay. I could hear it. Y'all can hear me, right?
Yeah, I can hear you right
Okay,
now.
all right. Okay. Well, I'll skip the video then. All right. Leslie plans.
In audio settings, if you click the little arrow there, it should say like same as system audio, and you'd be able to hear what's on your computer.
Okay. Okay, I'll just skip it. I'm kind of like Brad, you get middle age, technology is not necessarily your friend. So But I can certainly talk about what the news story talked about as well. But the reason this came about, this whole idea is Foundation started a collaborative a couple of years ago called Resilience High Point, which really is all about the power of collaborations, and everybody's already heard about what you can do with collaborations just today. But really trying to get collaborative efforts on issues that confront High Point is the work of Resilience High Point, and some of that, of course, has gotten sidetracked with COVID. But one of our main aims is connect and collaborate on community resources and solutions. And so I brought, when this money came down from the feds, it was a topic of conversations at one of our board meetings. Okay, but there's this money available, and so what are some needs in our community that we can address with this money? And sanitation stations was what was talked about as a need in the community, because this has already been mentioned. I mean, when the public library and facilities get closed down, folks experiencing homelessness, being able to take care of bodily functions and wash their hands and that sort of thing was even more difficult than it is. It's never that easy, but it became a lot more difficult. And with COVID running around, we just, that's not a recipe for good things to happen. And so, so that was kind of the nexus of how we ended up with sanitation stations. And so the objectives were really basic. I mean, reduce the COVID-19 transmission and the risk of transmission. Certainly wanted to place these sanitation stations in areas that were going to be utilized well, and certainly want to folks maintain proper hygiene with the hand washing and being able to use the bathroom properly. So that's kind of the simple objectives and goals of this effort. And so originally the idea was to do this for 3 months. We'd have an advisory committee, and two of those folks are on the call. Will and Michelle McNair are two of the 3 members of the advisory committee. Talk about doing 6 hand washing stations and 2 portable toilets. And of course, with COVID-19, these need to be cleaned quite frequently. And so that was part of the proposal. And then a weekly servicing as well. And then of course, we just keep an eye on these things, just if there's any problems that pop up during the day. And a lot of the proposal was really based on Asheville, who early on put up sanitation stations in the Asheville area. So we had a number of conversations with those folks about how things are working and the costs involved. And so the proposal is really based on their experience. I mean, other communities have also put these out in Charlotte and various other areas as well. But the proposal is really based on what Asheville was doing, because they started, I guess, back in April of last year. So very early on, they were doing sanitation stations for folks. But we ended up, they're still we're looking at 9 months of having the sanitation stations. That's for a couple of reasons. One is we got CARES funding from Guilford County. That's thanks to Brian and Carlbina Foster, who's a part of Resilience High Point, initiated those conversations. So we got some CARES funding to extend the sanitation stations. We also had our expenses were much lower than Asheville's experience. They had a major problem with folks sort of taking the paper towels and the toilet paper. And so that was about a third of their expense. And we haven't really had that at all. So that really, we were able to prolong the sanitation stations because of that. And we ended up with 5 hand washing stations and 4 portable toilets. And then there's one location that's serviced twice, which is in Centennial Street, which is near Open Door Ministry, because those get the heaviest use of all the sanitation stations. So here, the locations for the sanitation stations, Superior Foods, they were gracious enough to let us put a couple of toilets there in a sink. There's a his and hers portable toilets at Superior Foods near Open Door. Guys aren't the neatest of people, truthfully. So, and then there's a portable toilet and sink down at Helping Hands in South Main Street. There's a number of homeless camps below I-85 off Main Street, and we really wanted to have a toilet and hand washing station down that way. Similarly, near the library at High Point Community Against Violence, there's a portable toilet and sink. And then Brad already mentioned this. He wanted a hand washing sink for the folks he serves. And then the last one is a hand washing sink on Brentwood Street, and this is right near, just off Main Street. Again, near a number of homeless camps. I mean, there are other locations we tried to get a portable toilet and a sink that we could never get permission. Kind of near where that the sink is on Brentwood Street, and then North Main Street near Walmart. And also a number of homeless camps up that way, but we weren't successful placing those. We ended up with these. So here's some of my bad photography of all the locations around town where these are served. And we've gotten a lot of good feedback from folks using it, feeling certainly appreciate the service and being able to use a proper facility for the bodily needs. And they felt heard and respected as well, that somebody was thinking about them in times of COVID. It's really helped with the cleanliness as well. I mean, those areas are now cleaner than they were but before the sanitation stations were in place. And of course, it definitely felt a public need, because there was an issue down here on Washington Street, which is where my office is, about folks, going behind buildings and using the bathroom, and Helping Hands was having similar problems. So this has been something we've actually talked off and on a while. And so hopefully there'll be some kind of permanent solution with a couple of places having a sanitation station just available post-COVID. We'll see how that goes. So the cleaning and maintenance. So we contracted with a High Point-based janitorial company to perform the work. Some folks who have been cleaning our office down here on Washington Street for a long time. And the good thing about Brian is he knows a lot of the community members. And so he was able to talk to folks about, the sanitation stations and taking care of them and using them properly and that sort of thing. So we really haven't had any difficulties with vandalism or people doing other things, in the porta johns. There's been some minor issues. Occasionally somebody's been sleeping in them and that sort of thing, but they are locked at night as well. But they're cleaned twice a day, spraying down the walls and sanitizing everything. And then the A&B Portables does a service once a week. And so we've been keeping track of course, the problems and issues. But again, there haven't been anything significant, just little minor issues. And I think a lot of that goes back to Brian talking with folks and getting, there's been a woman who's actually been involved in sort of helping to clean and keep an eye on things as well. And she'll communicate with Brian if there's any problems, and he can chat with folks. So it's gone really well overall. And then we've had a bit of publicity, the TV story that I was trying to share with you guys. And then there's a follow-up one from WGHP, and then the High Point Enterprise has had a couple of stories, which speaks to Jessica's point about sort of promoting the benefits of having these community development block grant dollars that really fit a need and help provide solutions for those who are working in the community to try to make it a better place. And so it's always good to get publicity about the things that are going on, that people are committed in this community to addressing issues that are chronic and trying to make an impact. So we're really just thrilled to be able to do this, thanks to the city. I believe that's all I have. Turn it back over to you, Jessica.
Thank you, Patrick. That was great. Definitely a creative solution that, like you said, I'm not sure I would have ever thought of that. And it's nice to hear that some people were appreciative that you thought of them during all of this. So that was really awesome. Now, you should have been typing questions in the chat or the Q&A if you had them. If you have not yet, go ahead and do so now. And I'm going to turn it over to April Jones. April, do we have any questions in the chat at the moment?
We do, Jessica, thanks. I'll start off with Scott Jones. This is a question for you. Will the garden be available for the community, or is it just for the clients living in the tiny houses?
Yes, so that garden will be open for the community. We'd like to try, depending on how we manage it, be able to, when we put the bus shelter there, be able to have some way with that nice brick wall to be able to incorporate somewhere where the vegetables can be set there for people to come to the bus shelter to pick it up, actually. So that's kind of one of the things we're looking at. So if they're there, they're getting on or off the bus going to or home, then they can just pick up something and continue home with it.
Okay, and also Scott, I see where there was a couple of questions and you've already answered those. Do you mind if I read those to the group in
Yeah, that's
case
fine.
somebody else had that question? How many tiny houses are there in Gifford County?
So we were one of the first organizations in the state to actually build a tiny house community specifically to address homelessness. There are other tiny houses that were park models and things like that. But in Guilford County, we were the first in Guilford County to develop and implement the first tiny house community on Causey Street. I'm sorry, Causey Street. That community has 6 tiny houses sponsored by churches. So that's how we receive a lot of our funds, is through sponsorships and grants and other finances. And that's how we build it. So when we talk about collaboration, we truly collaborate with building them. The High Point, we hope to have 16 total houses and 2 3-bedroom by the end of next year total in High Point.
Okay, thank you for that. And what are the rents for the tiny houses?
So our organization provides what we consider permanent supportive housing, which means each community has a homeowners association, and the residents are part of that association. So the residents actually meet every month as part of their agreement to stay in the tiny house community. And they have different positions they fill. But whenever they come or they're referred to us by one of the COC member partners, then our case manager will sit down with them and determine what revenue they have, or if they have access to some sort of kind of supportive housing, or any type of revenue that they have to pay their rent. We look at trying to do 30% of their income, no more than 30% of their income. All of our leases are monthly lease, and they are inclusive. That means there's no water bill, no electric bill that you got to pay for. All those are covered under the rent, and that's to ease the burden and those barriers that a lot of people have, not to have to worry about electric and water. It's inclusive.
All right, thank you. And this question is kind of for anyone. How many homeless individuals do you see on a monthly basis?
We usually serve about 60. We have a street outreach every Saturday morning where we serve about 60 breakfasts, up to 60 people every Saturday morning. And our case manager is there to provide outreach to them, so if they have any needs. And then she has appointments here, so we probably see 10 to 15 a week.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'll jump in there. One of the things we have is a coordinated entry phone line. We don't really call it a hotline because it's not 24/7, but on average, we're getting anywhere between 25 to 50 calls a week. That doesn't necessarily mean they are homeless. They could potentially become homeless, but what we try to do is reach out to the client or the referral, try to do an assessment. We call it a VI SPDAT, and then get an idea of the level of their severity. So since we launched coordinated entry summer of last year, we've had significant phone call. We have noticed that decreasing over the last 30 to 60 days. I think that could be various reasons. It could be weather. It also could be stimulus checks, where people are able to stay housed or in a hotel. So we'll see what the next 30 to 60 days looks like when some of that money runs out.
Okay, thank you. I have another question. How do you assist homeless individuals who do not want to be sheltered? And that's for the group. Anybody?
Well, I'll jump in here, and then anybody else wants to. That's very common. To be truthful, a lot of the folks we're interacting with are not necessarily interested in going into a shelter. So we do our best to get them on our housing placement list based on, again, the severity of their need. We actually proactively now go out to the, Patrick mentioned some of the tent communities in the community. We have more knowledge now since we've been doing street outreach for about 6 months. We now have a better pulse on how many folks really are okay to live either outside somewhere or in some sort of tent community. We lead the point in time count. But that's a pretty common challenge, I'll put it that way. We want folks to be housed. We want folks to be healthy. We want folks to be in a safe place. And so we work with those that aspire to that. But I'll jump in, let others jump in here. Because we often try to connect folks to these organizations based on their need.
That is one of the, it's a very big challenge. One thing that of course, we try to still make sure that they have food. We try to make sure that during the winter times they have blankets to go out into their tents. We try to make sure they've got proper clothing. We try to make sure they still have access to things like Brian was talking about, having the SPDAPs done to see if there's anything that we can help them with going forward from that. We also make sure that they know that there's a safe place to come when they are ready to come into a shelter. Sometimes we see people, we know the people in our community, we know a lot of the homeless that stay in the camps. Sometimes people will come into our shelters 2, 3, 4, 5 times before it ever takes effect. And then we see them go on. It's a real hard when they're not ready to come. We can only help them so much. They have to be willing to help themselves and be ready to change. I say that you're never going to hit bottom until you quit digging. A lot of people are still digging, and that's okay. But when they get to the bottom and they're ready to come out, we want to make sure they know that we're there for them, that we are a safe place they can come. And it may take 2 or 3 times, but they do know that we're there as soon as they're ready.
Okay, thank you. I have another question. What happens when the shelters are full?
Can I jump in and sort of tagline, do double tagline there, whatever, tag team? Brian and I we've talked about this. I proposed an idea to him. We recently had a couple individuals out of Open Door Ministries over here, and they helped us with our carpenter build basically an 8x10, what we call a tiny house dorm. Basically, it had a functioning heat and air system similar to the exact same units we put on our tiny houses, but it's just a bedroom only. And so a lot of the folks don't want to go to shelters, and we recognize that. And instead of trying to push them, like Brad said, they're not quite ready, they haven't quite gotten there yet. But if there was more steps, in my opinion, to bring people up to shelter, or from a camp to a tiny house dorm, which is just a bedroom, but positioned within reach of shelter services, then they might go to shelter to get a few additional services, from shelter or transitional housing to maybe a tiny house instead of a 2-bedroom apartment. We don't have enough, in my opinion, looking in still from outside the in, we don't have enough steps. We're missing some steps. They're pretty large transitional steps from tent to shelter to a 2-bedroom apartment in most cases, because that's the only thing that's available sometimes. If we could implement a few levels there to keep them from reverting back to homelessness or reverting from shelter to shelter. And I think that if we had the tiny house dorm and we were partnered in a collaboration with all the shelters so that they can work with them outside of their shelter, but it's still a part of their client service, I think that's something we might could focus an area on. And sorry to take up time on that.
That's a great point, Scott. I'll just piggyback off of that. I mean, I think a lot of times when we say the continuum of care, obviously in our world, we primarily are in crisis response, right? The shelters, the hardest, some of the folks in the hardest situation. But I think a real continuum is bigger than that. This is getting me a little bit on my soapbox, but I think Scott's got a great point, is that we need to be thinking about shelters, and we need to be thinking about tiny houses, and we need to be thinking about, but really the beautiful thing would be to watch folks move through that process to permanent, stable housing, whether that's affordable housing, even market rate housing, have a bigger vision for what that could look like. So I think Scott's right. I think sometimes we get kind of stuck on our it's not that the steps we have are bad, but we could look at how that moves better. The other thing I'll say, back to the question regarding what do you do when you're out of shelter? Well, we face that very thing this past year. I mean, one of the reasons we had the county hotel was not only to test folks to make sure they didn't have COVID, or if they did, to quarantine them before they went into shelter, but it enabled us to have a better idea who's got availability. We were trying to get folks, they would either stay put in the hotel for a period of time until availability was made, especially for families. That's really challenging right now. Brad's taking care of women. Scott was out there flipping, pancakes for everybody. I mean, it was a real collaborative effort, but that was a great fear of ours, frankly, especially with COVID. Was like, what are we going to do? We're at 50% capacity. Somehow we were able to help each other out. And we hadn't solved it yet. We still have more work to do, but that was the solution, that an approach we took this past year.
All right. Let's see, this is for Brian. You mentioned crisis creates opportunity. COVID necessitates the need for collaboration and more concentrated approach to homelessness. Will this same collaborative energy be in play post-COVID?
I love that question. That is beautiful. What I'm trying to do is harness that right now. Like, never in my wildest dreams would I thought a year later we would have been collaborating the way we are, talking like even on this call, the way we're talking, the way we're thinking outside the box. And so, yes, whoever asked that question, what I want to do, my desire is to see that task force begin to shift from crisis response. We again, I wouldn't wish that upon anybody, but I think if anybody's been through a really hard patch, if you can get through that crucible, you learn some really good things. And then I'd love for us to harness, we're already doing this, like how we've shifted our conversation around recovery. So what does housing recovery look like? What does it look like to keep shelters sustainable that are still operating at 50% capacity? How do we partner with like tiny houses to build more of these housing opportunities? So yes, great question. We want to harness that. We don't want to lose that opportunity. And so we're looking to repurpose that and work really closely with the COC leadership on that.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, there was a question in here for Patrick. I think you already answered it, but I'm gonna read it out loud just in case. If you don't mind answering that for us. Will the hand washing stations remain after COVID?
Yeah, I talked back to a response, but I mean, I would, of course, this, I guess, depends on getting some funding for this, but particularly the ones near open door ministries, I mean, because there's such a high use of those. It'd be great to have those continue on. I mean, I think having them all is probably not realistic, unless, well, if the city wants to fund it, we'll certainly do it. But there might be some creative thinking about how to keep these things sustainable over the long haul. Because, I mean, it's several $1,000s a month, to have these, and a lot of it is the labor, because you clean these things twice a day. And so the labor cost is pretty high. But there's, like I said, when I mentioned the presentation, I mean, this has been, we've been talking about having a porta john down here on Washington Street off and on for a while, just for folks to be able to use the bathroom. So there's a definite need. And so I guess that's a long-winded answer to that. I'm hopeful that a couple of them can still be out permanently. And maybe Brad and I can talk about the hand washing station, figure something out down at West End, just because they have so many community events. I mean, it'd be nice for people to be able to wash their hands if they're having a cookout, right? And there's a watermelon all over their hands and the kids are sticky. It'd be nice to have a sink out there just for that purpose. So.
All right, thank you, Patrick. I have another question. Is there a day center in High Point or plans to create one? This is for anyone.
I can answer that, and I really would almost, I don't know if Michelle's still on, see community resource. The first part of your question is no, there is not a day center, but there is some, I don't know if informal is the right word, Michelle, I'll let you comment, but there is some conversation around that need that this community is considering, but currently there is not.
So if I could piggyback, we're looking at commercial property now. We're actually talking with one person. We would like to replicate something sort of like a maker space and what a day center would look like if we can pull enough partners together and find the facility. But a lot of times we hear people are experiencing homelessness in our breakfast line that they just want something to do during the week. They don't want to sit in the park or the library or somewhere else, but who is going to let them actually come in and work with them to do some kind of little carpentry or painting task or something like that? They want that. We know that. We hear it regularly. So we'd love to have further conversation about that since we're looking.
And Brian, I don't know anything official. I know that years ago, a couple of groups got together and was trying to actually get a day center in High Point, but it sort of fell through. And so I don't know if people at this point are, if anybody is actually looking at, something of that nature. And so it would be nice to have something of that nature that would serve not only your men, but also families and women. But maybe now that it's put out there, maybe somebody would donate some land, or maybe someone would donate a building or some money to actually pull all that together.
We do have a day center here on our campus, but it's just for our women that's in the shelter. And now that our shelter is also open 24/7. The women can also use our living rooms, our patios, kitchen and stuff throughout the day. We also have a couple libraries and computer rooms that they can use. But again, that is strictly just for our women in our shelter. It's not open to the community and everyone else in High Point. So that is a need that is out there that we're hoping gets addressed very soon as well.
I think for those that are watching this, I hope you see that the community's ripe for an opportunity like that. There's, again, you've got city leadership engaged, both at the elected and staff level. You have partners on this call. You have foundation support. I mean, that's what it's really going to take. It's going to take an effort like that to come together. Don't know who spearheads it. Not volunteering, I guess, but that's what it'll take, and to look at how different communities address it, do research, because I think I think High Point could shine, frankly. I think High Point could really shine and do it very, very well. So that's all I'll say.
Okay, have a question for Brad. Hold on just a second. What are the ages of the women, and are these women separated from their children?
You have to be 18 to come into our shelter. And we've had women from 18 to literally 90. of course, it's always very sad. We will have some women that will come in that's in their 80s. And it really, you talk about a sad situation when you see someone of that age in a shelter. Of course, it provides more, takes a lot more care as well. But it's 18 to 100. What was the second part of that question again, April?
Are these women separated from their children?
Some are. A lot of times, the children at this point is either in foster care or maybe living with another family member. Those are barriers that we work with. Not all of them have children, but the ones who do, most of the time at this point, because of some of the barriers that they do have, they are separated. And like I said, they're either in foster care or being raised by other family members.
Okay, I'm looking on the YouTube channel here, and there's a couple of comments. I'm going to read some of those comments to the group. It says, it's amazing how one person can change so many things into good things. Somebody said, agreed. I love that I'm hearing with Brad. I love what I'm hearing from Brad and Scott. Bravo, true ministry here in High Point. Glad to see Scott again. I've got a chance to work with him one time with my wife there, and was a pleasure being around them. We've learned something new. It's amazing what you guys do, and I like to like the mentality you set around the good people. And then somebody made a comment, movie in the park. I think, did you mention, Scott, something about a movie in a park?
No, but that sounds like a really good idea, though. I
What is a
like the way
question?
somebody's thinking. Yeah,
It was
that
kind
could
of
be
a
something
question.
I think High Point can pull off easily.
Yeah, a number of communities have done movies in the park. So it's a great idea. Let's do it.
Pre-COVID, we used to have churches come out and show movies in our garden. So yes, it's a great way for the community to come together.
Okay, Jessica, I've checked all my boxes and I don't see any more questions at this time, unless you guys have more questions. Add them to the chat box and we'll give you a few minutes. And if nothing else, I'll turn it back over to Jessica.
Awesome. Thanks,
Can I
April.
add
Go
something,
ahead,
Jessica,
Mike
real quick?
McNair. Oh, no, that was Patrick. Sorry.
It's okay. I just wanted to share, if you go on the Resilience High Point Facebook page, we're getting ready to do another convening that's about upstream thinking and trying to come up with innovative solutions to address some of the issues. I mean, not just homelessness, but anything that affects our community. This April 30th. So this whole notion of collaboration, we're going to take out to the sort of the next level. And so have different groups, not just folks, like for example, folks who are working with folks who are experiencing homeless, with folks who are working with children, and sort of coming up with ideas that are inclusive and impactful across sector. It's kind of thinking. So I said April 30th. If you go on the Resilience High Point Facebook page, you can find out how to register for that.
Awesome. Thank you. Is that something that maybe we could comment on the YouTube, within the YouTube comments as well? The April 30th date?
Yes, I mean, I can send, I guess, whoever oversees that for the city, the link. Yeah, definitely. Because I mean, the committee is not just for folks in the nonprofit sector, but anybody who's interested in this kind of work, because we have to engage the community to solve our problems. So.
That's awesome. Well, I saw Mike McNair hopped on. Mike, did you have anything to say, or would you just like me to wrap it up for you?
Well, as I say, better late than never. Sorry I'm late, but I was involved in we were interviewing for a vacant position, so I had to deal with that. So I just got off of that. I want to thank all of you for participating. Some of you hadn't seen in a while. Brian, I hadn't seen you in a while. Brad, seem like I see Patrick every week. So, but since I missed all of the discussion, I really can't wrap up because I don't know what you said. So
that's okay. I'll
Jessica,
totally wrap it up. I just didn't know if you wanted to say hi to the group.
Pardon?
I said, I'll totally wrap up. I just didn't know if you wanted to say hi to the group.
Well, hi to everybody, and let's keep working together and keep on keeping on. A lot of exciting stuff coming down the road. There's still a lot of resources coming at us that we have no idea how that's to be distributed or what the strings are. So a lot of different things going on. We have to pay attention and gobble up all the information we can. But certainly, as soon as we know something, we'll certainly share with all involved. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Mike. So I guess I'll wrap it up. I just want to thank everybody for tuning in today. A few things that kind of really stood out to me today is, number one, I mentioned that I'm on the Citizens Advisory Council and I've gotten to know these organizations relatively well, but I still even learned new things today that you guys do that I didn't necessarily realize the whole breadth of what your organization does. So big shout out to everybody that spoke today. I think the whole point of Community Development Week, like I said in the beginning, was to both educate and get the community excited about what all the things we've got going on and how you help the community. And I think you've totally done that. So thank you, everybody. For Community Development Week, it started yesterday, and yesterday's topic was affordable housing. Today we talked about homelessness. Tomorrow, April 7th, is going to be food insecurity. April 8th is services for youth and adults. And then Friday, April 9th, is neighborhood associations. So if you are watching this and you have time in your schedule to watch in the next couple days, definitely feel free to tune in. Everything will be on YouTube, kind of like it is now. You can watch yesterday's video again. So, I think the goal of getting everyone to understand how important this funding is and how I think great High Point is at utilizing it is, I think that goal was met, and sharing that with anybody that you can is definitely appreciated. A few people on the call invited people to come and volunteer in the future and kind of listed what those opportunities are. I think that's a fantastic plug and a great idea. And then, just to wrap up, a shout out to the city of High Point, to Michelle McNair, Mike McNair, April, everyone else that works really, really hard to both get these funds, to make sure that these organizations can apply and utilize them. I know they work very, very hard to do that stuff and to put things like this together, and to make sure that High Point is a better place. So shout out to you guys as well. And I think, unless anybody has any other comments or anything, that we'll go ahead and wrap it up.
Well, let me just say briefly, Jessica, something that, I was telling council last night about this and how they could watch it at their convenience. One of the things that's important about this is for anybody, particularly council, CAC, and others, community, to associate a face with the organization and the mission. Because a lot of times they just see a blurb that says, Tiny Houses is doing this. Well, they don't know who that is. And so I think it's helpful to kind of humanize that connection and understanding. You never know, somebody will walk up to you at the grocery store and say, I saw you on CD Week. So, but I think it's really important to help build those relationships. Even if it is through this type of medium, it's a lot more powerful than just reading a report or reading a list of numbers. So this is something that I'm real happy with, and Michelle doesn't want me to say this, but I'm gonna give her kudos. This is her brainchild, and I think it's done very, very well. And it's kind of set a new bar for us. We may never go back to in-person meetings. This is working pretty good for us. So, having said that, I'm done. But I want to thank everybody again.
Yeah, thank everyone. And I hope everyone has a wonderful day. Tune in later this week for more awesome organizations.
Thank y'all for having us. Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.